Oh, I'm happy to report that this week a dangerous fugitive has been brought to justice.
A 90-year-old man busted for feeding the homeless. Arnold Abbott is his name. He faces possible jail time and a $500 fine for preparing meals for the needy in a church kitchen. A new ordinance in Fort Lauderdale virtually outlaws groups from sharing food with the hungry.
Busted for feeding the homeless in public. And this monster cannot claim he did not know better because he was doing all this out of a church kitchen. So clearly he knows what Jesus said in Matthew, "For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and look out, the cops are here. Hide the loaves and the fishes." And I am glad they caught up with him eventually. And I am glad to hear the police use maximum force to take the perp down.
One of the police officers came over and said, "Drop that plate right now." And so I was carrying a weapon.
Oh, food is much worse than weapons in Florida. Fort Lauderdale is really looking out for the homeless.
This is a public safety issue. It's a public health issue. The experts have all said, if you are going to simply feed them outdoors to get them from breakfast to lunch to dinner, all you're doing is enabling that cycle of homelessness.
Yes, by feeding them, Abbott is causing them to be homeless. I mean, he's really a food pusher. And with hardened cooks like Grandpa here, these homeless will just want more and more. They'll come to expect food whenever they see humans around. Fort Lauderdale, do what I do at the end of the day. Tie your humanity in a bag, hang it in a tree. That way they can't get at it.
Hi there, I'm Darren Howard.
And I'm Robert Nisbet.
You're tuned into Video Radio, independent media.
For an intelligent world, and we're taking a look at the homeless issues and poverty.
Yes, we are. We're taking a look at all of those things that mainstream media refuses to look at, and the crime that is arresting an old guy for feeding the homeless.
Well, you know, if you feed the homeless, they will come, and that could drive down property values in Fort Lauderdale.
Yes, and entirely getting those homeless off of the streets and out of the mainstream, it backfired, though.
However, yeah, we do have some good news on that front. The ban for feeding the homeless has been overturned, pending review.
Yes, so remember, activism is working, fascism is losing, and this is what works.
Arnold Abbott, a 90-year-old World War II veteran. You might remember him from last month when he was arrested for feeding the homeless in Florida. Well, Arnold is still facing 60 days in jail and a $500 fine, but after protests and a massive backlash, he's achieved a small victory. It's no longer illegal to feed homeless people in public places in Fort Lauderdale. For now, anyway, the law has been lifted for 30 days. Arnold Abbott has been running a food kitchen for decades in memory of his late wife, and it's not the first time he stood up to the authorities either for what he believes in, and he says he's not giving up yet.
I'll help the homeless as long as there's breath in my body. I don't intend to stop. My object is to win the case against Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and then go on and try to change these repressive laws that are being done in all of the cities throughout the United States. That's my object.
Okay.
The fact that the gentleman is still facing a $500 fine and 60 days in the Hoosgow is still not very good.
And a couple of ministers got arrested along with him. No word on what their fate is yet either. However, taking a look at the way social media works, I have the distinct feeling millions of people are watching.
We are facing somewhat the same problem here in BC, though. A Surrey soup kitchen recently came afoul of Fraser Health.
Yes, and you know, it could be dangerous to actually feed people, so they prevent feeding of people.
But health regulations, you know.
Yeah, it's important. Check it out.
It started back in February, a pop-up soup kitchen in Whalley, the city centre of Surrey.
This is for the fellow up there in the wheelchair.
A place where there's a lot of need and a lot of generosity.
We're just out here because we love you guys, right?
It was Aaron Schulte who got the ball rolling, inspiring a couple of dozen friends to join in and prepare hot meals every other Sunday and come down and serve them up.
We're all just people living on the poverty line ourselves. So no one here is rich. I mean, we scrimp and save to do this. This is, you know, what makes our heart happy.
They used to set up here on property owned by the Whalley Legion, but on Thanksgiving of all days they got the boot. But as luck would have it, there was an empty lot right next door that the city granted them permission to use. A happy ending? Not yet. because soon after, Fraser Health called and said
that we're breaking the Fraser Health Code and that you're not allowed to cook food in your own home, that you had to only cook in a certified Fraser Health kitchen.
Turns out serving food outside of the home requires a health operating permit. Fraser Health says it's only trying to ensure the safety of the public. Fraser Health says it doesn't have a closure order, not yet, and that they're willing to work with the volunteers.
How was lunch today?
Good. Even so, after serving the homeless for 8 months without any complaints, they're feeling more than a little picked on all of a sudden.
I've lost a lot of sleep over this. I work full time. I have a family at home, my girl and my grandbabies, and this is a big undertaking.
An undertaking that's very much appreciated by the people who matter most to them.
I think these people are wonderful for what they're doing for us down here. I'm honored to have them down here. It's great.
Linda Aylesworth, Global News.
Okay, so health regulations do make a difference, but these guys are actually experienced at it, right?
Yeah, they haven't had no complaints in all the time they've been operating since like February this year.
Just recently, though, here in Canada, out of 32 million people, one group did get poisoned. And of course, media is hyping this one right out of the park. It's kind of ridiculous, though. We feed so many people on a community basis. Why on earth are they doing this?
Well, it's to keep the public safe.
Yeah, and to improve the profits of McDonald's.
Down here in the Okanagan, though, there recently was a war of words between a federal member of parliament and the mayor of Vernon discussing homeless issues.
Now, you got to listen to this guy from Vernon because he says stuff.
Kudos to him for sure.
I know. So, well, here, check it out.
The local Conservative MP was in attendance at Vernon's Polson Park recently when this plaque memorializing homeless people who have died in the city was unveiled. Colin Mays saying something at the ceremony that upsets the Vernon mayor.
For a member of parliament to make that statement is very disturbing.
The MP reportedly said homelessness is not a federal government issue. Yes, it is, says the mayor.
The issue of homelessness is clearly a federal government issue, and those who are expert in the issue lay the blame clearly at the feet of the two levels of senior government, and unfortunately, local communities are stuck with the issue.
Colin May says his comments were taken out of context, and in an email statement from Ottawa says, the people that are homeless are not homeless because of government. It is due to addictions, drug and alcohol, and mental illness for the most part. Providing housing for every homeless person is not the solution to the reason they are homeless. Money will not fix the problem. Again, the mayor disagrees.
Again, himself saying that spending money on homelessness doesn't solve the issues of homelessness. That clearly goes against all of the evidence. In fact, all of the studies on homelessness and the cost of dealing with substance abuse and mental illness is easily reduced by simply providing housing.
The mayor's so disturbed by May's comments, he thinks the MP should consider resigning.
It's actually the first time during my term that I've come out publicly chastising or criticizing an MP. He is entirely responsible for the public dialogue. That dialogue, if you were going to say that, that dialogue should be public.
Blaine Gaffney, Global News, Vernon.
So, wow.
Yeah, of course, it's their fault they're homeless, right?
Yeah.
Housing wouldn't help the problem at all.
The Conservatives, though, they've got a different view on this whole homeless thing altogether, and we hear it every time. On the Re-elect Stephen Harper 2015 page, they actually say we should cut off all social services so people have to turn to the church for their relief.
Or private organizations.
And, of course, we couldn't possibly tax the 1% and feed everybody. That just doesn't make sense.
Well, $46 a year would cover the cost of the homeless in Canada per person.
Yeah, but, we don't do that. The report just came out. 200,000 Canadian homeless.
This is offensive.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, this rescue van is out on the streets of Edmonton handing out water and food to the people here who are homeless.
You want some water right now? Yeah. There we go, bro.
This is a snapshot of what cities across the country are dealing with. A new national report by two advocacy groups found that in an average year, 200,000 people in Canada experience homelessness.
The largest group is single adult men between 25 and 55. They form almost half of the homeless population.
They also found that Aboriginal people are overly represented and that youth and members of the LGBT community are particularly at risk. Overall, when it comes to getting people off the street, some cities are doing better than others. Edmonton, Calgary, and Vancouver all have aggressive plans to fight homelessness, which center around moving people into stable housing.
If you take that chronically homeless person who's been on the streets for years with complex problems, if you put them in housing and give them the supports they need, they stay housed and it actually costs less.
The report's authors want all levels of government to work together to create more affordable housing. They acknowledge that would have a big price tag, but say homelessness is already costing Canadians around $7 billion a year. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Edmonton.
So, of course, we have the entire Conservative government ignoring the fact that there's such rampant homelessness. 1 million people on food bank assistance right now.
But fortunately, some municipalities are stepping up and taking a look at the problem and doing something about it.
The interesting part here, though, we covered the Vernon thing earlier. Kelowna, we're just north of Vernon, or we're just south of Vernon. We feed less homeless people here than Vernon does.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it blows me away. On a daily basis, the shelter in Vernon is feeding more people than it is here in Kelowna, even though we have twice the population.
Of course, even if you have a job or a pension, housing is still a struggle, especially when you're living in poverty conditions.
So, and coming up in the next segment, we're going to talk about the struggle for homelessness, and we're going to continue looking at what the major media does not cover.
I'm presenting some municipalities' solutions.
Yes, I'm Darren Howard.
I'm Robert Nisbet.
We'll be right back after this lack of commercial messages.
A lot of people think poverty is a problem for other people in other neighborhoods. But even if you or no one you know is ever affected by poverty, not doing anything about poverty is costing us all. It's costing money, more and more money every single year. British Columbia has the highest poverty rate in Canada. Not addressing this comes at a price. And this is what it looks like when we do the math. For starters, it costs us $1.2 billion per year to pay for the healthcare costs related to poverty. That's because poverty is literally bad for your physical and mental health. You're more likely to live in poor quality or unsafe housing, or none at all. You're more likely to go hungry, have a job that exposes you to hazards, or end up with preventable health conditions. We've heard a lot lately about how we need to get tough on crime. But some crime could be prevented by reducing poverty, which is linked to crimes of desperation, low literacy rates, and living in unsafe situations. The poverty-related costs of crime in BC add up to $745 million per year. Then, there's the income that the poor might have earned from working, if they had access to better supports and training. Or the income that the working poor could have earned, if their jobs paid better wages. This is also a loss to our economy, to the collective wealth of our society. And it adds up to as much as $7.3 billion per year. So that's what it's costing us to stick with the status quo of keeping 1 in 9 British Columbians in poverty. Altogether, it works out to between $8 and $9 billion every year. This is a terrible deal. And the worst part of this is that it would cost us between $3 and $4 billion per year to put an effective poverty reduction plan in place. That's less than half of what poverty is costing us now. You don't have to be an economist to see that it costs more to keep people in poverty than it does to fix the problem. It's just simple math. Not for other people in other neighborhoods, but for all of us.